everybody, it's me, Sealy, and I'm back with another video. This time, I'm doing something a little bit more different. We do have a new Gwent expansion coming in hot just around the corner very soon, and a lot of cards that comes with it, of course, new cards. And what I thought I would do is kind of look at these cards in depth, talk about them, and what I think about them, and then I would love to hear from you guys. What do you think? What I'm hoping to achieve with this is maybe giving people some kind of an idea of, you know, how good are the cards, how do you rate them, and what to play in the next patch. Maybe this will give you some kind of a direction of how you want to build your decks next season. And yeah, let me know if you like this type of content. I would love to make more of these, and I think throughout this patch and all the reveals that we will be getting, I will be posting videos for you guys. I hope everything goes well and you enjoy this as much as I do. Let me tell you, I'm so excited. I'm always excited when there's a new expansion coming in soon. So let's talk about the cards and share your opinions. What do you think? Do you agree with me? It's okay if you don't. I would love to hear your thoughts. Of course, you know, you can always estimate a card to be a certain way, and then when the patch actually launches, it's a bit, you know, different in action. But this is kind of just talking in theory and seeing what is good and what is not, and rating these cards for you guys. I hope you stick with me throughout the video and that you like it, and maybe you will subscribe as well. That'd be awesome. All right, let's get into it. The first card up on the menu is the Mushy Truffle. Does sound delicious because it has truffles included, of course. But yeah, this card I think is going to be absolutely crazy, and I want to tell you why. Okay, first off, it's a neutral, so you can play it in any faction. It's 9 provisions, so keep that in mind. But when you play this card, which is a deploy, you will spawn and play a bonded unit from your starting deck. We're gonna jump into the deck builder soon and look at the bonded units for each faction and see what we could do with those if we were to theory craft a deck. And this is the existing bonded units. I think more of them might be added. Who knows? We're gonna have to find out. As of now, we haven't seen anything new in terms of bonded units yet. So you spawn a bonded unit from your starting deck, which means you have to play the bonded unit that you are intending on spawning from the Mushy Truffle. And then the order is spawn and play Golden Froth. We'll look at that card in depth as well for those who are not familiar with it. This is the Golden Froth. Of course, it boosts 3 adjacent units by 2. So you know that. And remember, it has the alchemy tag. So this is something that the Mushy Truffle will spawn for you. Basically, the value of this card is you are going to spawn a bonded unit of your choice in whichever faction you are playing. You are very, very likely to play it for about 6 points of deploy. Some of these will play for more later, overtime value, some engines and stuff like that. But let's say on average, you are pretty safe in getting at least 6 points of value from your bonded unit. And then you have another one from Golden Froth, of course, another 6 points. Because this is a location that has resilience, it means basically your Golden Froth can work as carryover, and you can play that in later rounds. If you play your bonded units in round 2, and then you want to play your location resilience in round 3 and spawn out the Golden Froth, then that's doable with the order ability there. So yeah, it basically is a 12 for 9 is what you can think of it as. However, it has some extra synergies depending on what cards you are playing. The order ability is really big, and let's talk about this faction for faction, how you would be playing this card in a certain faction. What's like the best use of this with the current cards as of now, which is, you can check the dates on the video. Before we jump into deck builder, I actually think it's important we look at which factions does this actual froth benefit most from, because some factions will benefit a little bit more of this card than others. But let's think about which factions might benefit the most. And you do have the Skellige Alchemy that gets value from the fact that this is an alchemy tag, of course. And then NR can get boost value for things like Luring Incitement or protecting an engine. NG can get assimilate value because you're creating a new card. And in Scoia'tael, you can play something like Seer to double proc it, so you get the double value, or it can help in protecting some of your threats. Another thing that this card really does for Scoia'tael, which I think is kind of a game changer, is the fact that you can now play Alzur from hand. And that is actually pretty crazy, because the only way you were really able to do that before was with the Mahakam Forge leader. You could play it, you could play Alzur from hand, then you play a special with your Mahakam Forge leader, and then you can trigger all the orb chains with Alzur. Well, now you can play Alzur from hand, have this resilience artifact on the board or location, and then you spawn the Golden Froth and your Alzur will instantly proc, which is pretty cool, not having to like tutor him out from Necromancy and things like that to kind of, you know, those could cause potential breaks for Alzur, but now you don't really mind if you find him in your hand, which is a pretty cool thing. All right, well, other than that, I think now we're gonna look into the different factions and see what kind of decks can we build. I picked this one apart and really thought about all the possible things that you could be doing, so we're gonna cover those. I have my little notes here so I don't forget anything. Let's take a look. All right, let's start with Drog. So this deck will definitely benefit a lot from the poor infantry. Of course, I think this might even bring Drog back a little bit, because it is very, very nice. You of course get the Froth value quite easily if you want it, and you also get kind of Drog units here very nicely. You can proc your Drog a little bit faster, giving you more value. An interesting card that I do want you to look at is when you look at neutral bonded units. There is actually something here to definitely pay attention to, which is the Caravan Vanguard. This card used to be played with Drog when Adalia could spawn or create units that were neutral. Now she can't do that anymore. Now, could this mean that we see a Caravan Vanguard Comback? Who knows? The good thing about it is that it's fairly cheap at 5 provisions, and you can actually get body that has a little bit more than a 1 point strength, and that can be important when you think about cards like Lacerate or Lambert or any kind of, you know, easy removal that punishes a wide row. Usually your PFI soldiers are very easily removable by your opponent. Think about like precision strike pings, for example. So having Caravan Vanguards actually puts a little chunkier units on the board, which might be nice for you if you want your Revenants to survive. So that's something to keep in mind, that we do actually have a neutral Vanguard or neutral bonded unit here. Which isn't bad and maybe could be seen in Drog again. But I think the most common one still will be the PFIs. Of course, those will kind of be the ones to look out for, because they are a great value for the truffle. The truffle card, I'm calling it right now. They are so new, I don't even know what they're called yet. Yeah, the Mushy Truffle. Try to boink that one into my head. The Mushy Truffle. I don't know if I would eat that, honestly. Anyway, let's look at the second choice that you have, which is Cintrian Enchantress, a card that hasn't seen that much play. However, if you want to go full on mages, this would be an opportunity. You don't have to play 2 off of these, you can play just 1. Of course, playing the Mushy Truffle in general means that you're breaking your devotion. And when you look at Northern Realms value for the 4 provision cost bronzes, they tend to be approximately like 6 on 644, something like that. Like, they're not great, especially for NR. So you really don't mind sticking a Cintrian Enchantress into your deck, especially in a full mage one, and you will get decent value. And I think that you could be able to play the Mushy Truffle with the Cintrian Enchantress in something like a mage deck. These are the 2 bonded cards in Northern Realms, and I think both of them could be used. Like we talked about, Northern Realms will benefit quite nicely from the extra boosts that you get from the Froth Alchemy card. All right, let's look at the next faction, which I think will be Nilfgaard. Okay, so Magnet is kind of a cute card to be playing. However, the issue with Magni is you don't want to play cards like Joachim or Vigo, because that will kind of, well, it will pollute the pool for your finds on Vigo. And of course, you don't want to play your Joachim and then pull a Magni. That used to be the classic one, Joachim into Magni. That's usually quite awkward. But if you're not playing any of those cards, definitely consider playing Magni Division, I think. And you could go with the safe option, which is Alba Pikemen, of course. They also have a bonded ability that is not too bad at all. And Nilfgaard will, of course, benefit from the assimilate that you get. And it is an engine, which is quite nice. The engine threat in general is quite cool. Another thing, if you are considering running this in a assimilate list, you have to fit in. Like when you make these new cards, you always have to remember, okay, how can I fit these provisions in? So in Nilfgaard, maybe it's fine to play this card if you intend on cutting, for example, Vigo or Joachim, because you will have to make space for it somehow. It is 9 provisions after all, which means something else has to go. So maybe it is playable. We'll see. I think it could certainly be worth it. Okay, let's move on to monsters. Now, I think this card is really cool for monsters, specifically because of the Seleno Harpy. The Harpy is a really strong card, but it hasn't seen that much play because Death Wish in general hasn't been seeing that much play. But I think with easier access to the Harpies with this location, now you can play Death Wish bronzes and actually get value from them. So the Harpies are kind of a cool card that definitely get buffed from this location, and the best thing is it doesn't buff V. Like V as an archetype has kind of you know, made Death Wish very hard, difficult to play, because you don't want to buff V, but you also want people to try out some Death Wish. And I think this is a really cool way of actually doing that and allowing people to experiment a little bit more with those Death Wish bronzes. Like Harpy in itself will be quite nice value, and you know, of course, the bonded ability for Harpies actually really good. So I think this card might definitely see a comeback in monster decks, which I think is quite exciting. And then we can look at the Plumard a little bit. Unfortunately, Plumard in itself is quite not a great bronze. It definitely has been power crept quite a lot, so I don't think that this card will see play with the location. I think mainly we're going to see it in like Death Wish monsters, which could be quite nice. Now I think we're gonna look at Syndicate a little bit. This one is pretty interesting because it doesn't strictly benefit from the Alchemy card, the Froth card in itself, but it does get some other engine benefits basically from running the Truffle. The route you could take is you could go for Passiflora and just go for a lot of Slice Seductresses. You can get approximately 5 of them, which is definitely a pretty crazy engine threat if your opponent is incapable of dealing with all of them. So in a full-on Passiflora deck with like Adriano and the location Passiflora, you can get a lot of these like Seductresi. Seductresses? Seductresi sounds great. Like cacti, Seductresi. So you can get a lot of those and just, like I said, have the ultimate engine threat, which is a pretty cool way. Maybe we'll see some Passiflora experimenting next season. All right, and then we can go to my personal favorite that I'm definitely gonna try out, like 100%, and that is the Horson Senior, of course, with the cut up lackeys and a lot of crimes, like bring Syndicate crimes back. Syndicate is not my favorite faction, but what I've had the most fun playing with Syndicate cards is definitely these the Horson Senior cut up lackey combo with a bunch of crimes. I love that. You literally have machine guns on the board. Ooh. That can get out of hand pretty fast. Okay, so imagine the scenario where you have your location. You could spawn a cut up lackey from that, and then with the help of the Congregate leader, you could spawn your tokens, play your Horson Senior later, or in the same turn if you have used your Truffle location in round 2 and you have it as resilience and you can spawn the Froth, you could just go ahead, put 3 engines on the board, Congregate, 2 pings, Horson Senior, right in between of them, transform into 2 lackeys. You have 3 engines on the board, and boom, you can boost them with your resilience scenario. I think that's awesome. Those are hard to remove. Like, that's a real threat for your opponents. And then it's just time to get criminal, play a lot of crimes, and have your little machine guns on the board that just go pew 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 and can remove so many threats. Like I know I'm gonna be trying out that one. That's gonna be so fun. Then of course we do have the beggar. I think the beggar is like a nice off target for Passiflora decks. Like maybe you're getting bled really hard and you have to play your Passiflora out, and then you want to have some short round tempo, and the beggar could actually play for a good amount of short round points. Another thing is that if Jackpot ever would make a comeback as a leader, then you might actually want to just play the location for the beggars. Who knows? I could see that happening. Let's look at the next faction, which is Squirtle. Now, the bonded units here might not seem that exciting because those are cards that don't really see play. Mahaka Marauder in itself is a lot of point slam. Your first Marauder is going to come out and play for 6, and then your second one is going to become an 8 if they stick on the board, of course. So if you think about it, this is kind of the most point slammy card, bonded card that exists right now that you could be playing from the Truffle location. So you could see, you know, maybe we're going to see Justice make a comeback for just a solid tempo play. Who knows? But either way, these Marauders are quite cute, definitely to play just for good points. The question I think that Squirtle will have to face is, what do you cut? Like, Squirtle in general is already quite tight on provision, so how do you fit this 9 provision card into the mix? So we'll see, but I'm definitely sure that there will be some versions that actually play location in Squirtle. Then you have the Brighthead Officer. Unless we see some elf buffs and unless elves become the viable archetype, then I don't think we will see this Brighthead Officer because it's just playing for less points than the Marauder. So if you want to play this in Squirtle, I definitely think we're going to see some Marauder action for that faction. Ooh, Marauder action for that faction. That sounds great. Another really cool interaction in Squirtle that you can do with Simlas is you have your Simlas, and then you can double create your the new spell card that we're going to talk about a little bit later. You will use the spell card, and then you create 2 Dolblathana elves, and then you can buff them immediately with the Froth. Like, they will probably benefit from the Froth a lot, especially something like Dolblathana Sorceress really enjoys the boost that you give her. Another thing worth mentioning is just in the same way that Alzur works with this Truffle card, your Dolblathana Whisperer will also kind of do the same thing, where you can play her and then you trigger the special card and maybe your orb chain for a lot of value on the Dolblathana Whisperer. The last faction that we haven't talked about just yet is of course Skellige. Now, I think Skellige is super interesting because probably the Truffle will just see most value in Skellige because of the Crow Clan Preachers. They are like a huge engine threat, of course. When you play that, you also play Gedinath. Like, that is definitely going to be the route for Skellige next season, is playing Alchemy, playing Gedi. When you play Gedi, you already have the bonded to your axis. Like, it's very easy to get the bonded value with the location. And another card that gets really good value in Gedinath would be Filavandrel. And this is a card that I really like, but it hasn't seen a lot of play. Of course, it refreshes the order of an allied location, which is nice because you can re-enable the Froth Alchemy card in Skellige. And you could also have an off-target with the Gedinath, so you could proc the last chapter of Gedinath. Like, Filavandrel, in order for you to play it, basically you want to have 2 targets for it to kind of guarantee getting value on it. And it actually does play for a 10 with the Alchemy card, of course, playing for 6 points, and your Filavandrel being 4, and then you have the extra, maybe you have the bonded Crow Clan Preachers that will give you even more value on it. So, you know, it's a pretty cool card, like a 10 for a 5. Not bad. And you can play that in Skellige, especially because you have the Gedinath. You have the extra target there. Alright, so we talked about the Crow Clan Preachers and the Gedinath, and maybe the Filavandrel actually being in the mix there somehow. I think that would be a pretty cool inclusion for a Skellige. And then we can look at the Bearmaster. Now, this card is definitely going to be a cool card to play with the Truffle if you have easy access to beasts. So any non-alchemy Skellige deck could definitely go this way as long as you can access those beasts fairly consistently. This should just be a good value card. Or, you know, consider running one off in alchemy even. One Bearmaster, because it's kind of the same thing that with Syndicate. It might suffer in a short round where you don't want to pull a Crow Clan Preacher in a short round because it's really slow. Maybe you played your Getty round 2, you're in a round 3 scenario. You'd rather just play for points, and then the Bearmaster does a better job at that than the Crow Clan Preacher. So that's worth considering. I think we have covered all the factions and how you can use the Truffle in the future. I actually had a word with Shaggy from Team Aretuza, recently qualified for Open number 4, one of the top players in the game. He actually says, that I thought was worth including here, is that he says he thinks this will be auto-include in every single competitive deck next season. Because of the value that it has and the potential carryover points that you can use. Like 6 points of those points, those 12 points will be carryover, basically. That is very flexible. Alright, it's time to jump into the next card now that we covered the Mushy Truffle quite well, I think. Let's talk about this new nature card called Bountiful Harvest, sitting at 6 provisions for Scoia'tael, and it does the following: create and play a bronze Doblathana elf, then depending on the position of the chosen unit, boost the leftmost, random, or the rightmost unit in your hand by 2. So that's a pretty cool one, and I think it does sound very, very strong. Let's first take a look at the pool of Doblathana elves and how likely you are to get certain cards. Okay, so here are all the Doblathana elves. There are 6 of them in total. Now, the main cards that I'm assuming that you are looking for if you are playing this card is either the Sorceress of Doblathana or the Whisper of Doblathana. Those will be very good to play in Spellotell, of course. Your odds of finding different cards are going to be a little bit different. So you will see 3 out of 6 of these cards. You have 80% chance of finding either the Whisper or the Sorceress when you play this card. So it is a fairly consistent card, and 20% of that time you're probably gonna go for the Point Slam Doblathana Archer. I thought about movement and trying to find the Doblathana Sentry for any kind of movement deck, but it's only going to be a 50-50 of you actually finding this, and you get super punished if you don't end up finding your engine, so nothing really synergizes with movement other than the Sentry, so it's probably not going to see play in that, but mainly the Spellotell situation. The hand buff part of this card seems like a bit of a bonus, because you are probably just trying to find one of the 2 cards I mentioned. And then depending on, you know, where they are when you see them, you will get a hand buff in your hand on some unit. So yeah, that's kind of like an added bonus to the card. The big part is actually finding like a Doblathana Sorceress or a Whisper. I think a lot of decks are going to play double of these so that you can play Simlas. Like Simlas into double creating one of these cards, like let's say you can pull off a double Doblathana Sorcerer. That's a huge engine threat for your opponent, definitely. And you could potentially buff those cards with the Alchemy card from the Truffle location if you happen to have it on the board. By the way, even bigger threat, right? But yeah, so you can get double engines on the board with Simlas, basically. I kind of call these engines. They're not like straight up engine cards, but they are similar. Another interesting thing is you can basically create an infinite chain of this Bountiful Harvest and Sorceress of Doblathana, because you could find the Bountiful Harvest and then you can like create a new one with your Sorceress, you can buff it. So it is quite interesting. That's in theory. You're probably not going to do it, but just, you know, I think this card in itself and the Filavandrel card that we'll talk about next, those are both cards that means that we're going to see some really tall Gords in the future. They might even go to like 30, but maybe not that much. But like the average Gord value, you're gonna play taller Gords definitely because of these cards. So you're gonna get a few extra points on the Gords as well, which is quite a strong buff for any type of a Gord deck. So I think those are the main points for this card. The Gord value, finding your Sorceress or the Whisperer, maybe playing this with Simlas, running double of these. Definitely seems like a strong card. We'll see. Of course, I guess one thing to mention is I do think that Scoia'tael spells is going to have a little bit of trouble in fitting this in because it is 6 provisions, and when you think about it, you're already playing the orbs. And I don't know if you want to cut the orbs. So it'll be interesting to see what the deck will compensate on. Like what is going to have to go in order for you to be able to run double Bountiful Harvest. But I think that's definitely something that people will aim for because the Simless is just too strong, right? Okay, let's move on to the next card, which is Filavandrel. Well, this card has been in the game before. It used to be a leader card, but now it's back as a 12 provision gold card that I'm super excited to see. This is another card that Scoia'tael is definitely happy to see. Deploy on melee row, it creates and plays a Scoia'tael special card with a provision cost equal to this unit's power. So if you buff it in your hand, you're going to create a special card with that provision cost. Then you have the option to go ranged, so you create and play a Scoia'tael special card with a provision cost equal to or lower than this unit's power. So of course the melee one is a set value, and then the ranged one has a bigger pool, so you might want to play him ranged if, for example, he's boosted by 7. If you play something like Dunka, and that's a bit awkward because of course you can't play him on melee then, since there are no 7 provision cost special cards in Scoia'tael. And you might want to find something like Rebuke. Then you might want to play him ranged and try to fish for a Rebuke, or if he's at 7 power, you can get any other special 6 or less, of course. Situationally, he can benefit from you playing him ranged. I think ideally though, you want to buff him to a 6, which is quite easily achievable with something like Circle of Life or Dunka. And you can buff him to 6 or 8. I think 8 is realistically the highest number that you can buff him to, and in that case he can tutor out a Isengrim's Council, or create an Isengrim's Council, which is quite valuable. If you manage to actually get him to 10, you can get a Call of the Forest, and if you manage to get him to 12, you could get Waters of Brokilon, which is kind of the meme way to go. Like you could play Ithilien and a lot of hand buffs to maybe get him to 12 so that you can get double Harmony, double Waters of Brokilon. But you know, realistically, I don't think that's gonna happen too often. He's just happy going on melee row as a 6. And then he can buff or spawn things like orbs or the new nature card, the Bountiful Harvest that we just talked about. He's just gonna play for a really good amount of value in Scoia'tael archetypes. He of course buffs Gord with an additional point and has a lot of synergy with your other cards. So 12 provisions, sure, it's quite pricey, but the value definitely is there. He will be a bit underwhelming if he stays at 4 power and you actually cannot buff him up. Let's say you didn't find him in your hand at any point in the game, so you couldn't hand buff him. But then you could still tutor him out from Call of the Forest or Isengrim's Council, and then he instantly gets the boost from that, which is not bad value either. So that's kind of a way to save him not getting any buffs at all. You might be asking, well, can this card see any play outside of Scoia'tael? And I think yes, it should see some amount of play in something like Symbiosis. Because imagine a scenario where you have like Athena and then you have Filavandrel who will spawn a special card. You can get like 5-6 points extra just from the Symbiosis value, which is quite cool. Alright, so what are the best ways of boosting Filavandrel? Like I mentioned, Circle of Life and Dunka will probably be the more competitive ways of boosting him when he's in your hand. You can tutor him out with Call of the Forest or Isengrim's Council to get the boost on him. You could hit good RNG and boost him from the nature card that we just talked about, the Bountiful Harvest. The hand buff from that could follow in Filavandrel as well. And then if you really want to go for those cheeky combos and try to get like a double waters, then you would certainly have to play something like Ithleen. Maybe you want to play the Saboteurs as well, the Elven Saboteurs. They could potentially buff him quite nicely. It could be a cute red coin strategy, but it is quite, you know, you don't want to usually play those cards on blue coin. And I do think that Filavandrel is going to see play. Alright then, so in summary, I would say all of these new cards will see play. They seem quite strong, all of them. We have 2 Squirtle cards, of course a gold one at 12 provisions. Something needs to go there, so we'll see exactly what it replaces. But I definitely think that we will see a lot of Filavandrels. I don't know if they will be auto-include, it depends a little bit, but a lot of inclusion for sure. Like, he will see play. That I'm not worried about at all. Whether he's going to be auto-include for Spellotell, I don't know. And then we can talk about Bountiful Harvest. Now that one I think is definitely something you want to fit into your Spellotell decks so that you can play them with Simlas, for example. That just seems like a very, very strong combo. And I think just the fact that you can get them from the sorceresses is really good as well. So I mean, that card is definitely just going to be played. Even if you don't even include it in your deck, you might, if you're playing some kind of Spellotell, you might still find them with the sorceresses, and they are very, very strong. When you find the good units, which we concluded you have an 80% chance of finding what you're looking for. So yeah, strong card, that one. At 6 provisions though, it is a little bit difficult to fit into Squirtle as it is right now. And then the Mushy Truffle, super good card. I think that one's just going to be really strong. It's a neutral, so you can kind of fit it anywhere, and we covered basically it is playable in each faction. Like, you can play it in each faction. I really think this card is quite strong, and we'll see a lot of play. You know, especially strong I think in Skellige. That's going to be the front runner that kind of wants to always run that card. But other than that, it will still be good value in other factions as well. And I definitely think we're going to see a lot of play on that one. So it's going to be really interesting to see. In terms of design, I like all of these cards. I really do. I think they're fun. They're going to be interesting to see how they work out. So they are, you know, they are flexible. You definitely have to time them right and think about, okay, do I play melee? Do I play it ranged? Where do I get most value of this? And how do I utilize the carryover from the truffle, for example? So very strong cards, and we've really kicked off things for the next expansion. I cannot wait what's gonna happen. If you liked this review, please give me a thumbs up and, you know, comment what you think. I'm sure I missed some combos and things that you guys can think of. So let me know what your thoughts are on these cards. Are they gonna see play? Are they not? Are they too strong? Are they too weak? But yeah, I think all of these are strong. Like, they are strong cards and they will see play. 100%. None of these seem weak to me. That's my conclusion. All right, see you for the next one and let me know what you think.